Happy Monday, my littles. Today for Math Workshop, we're going to need a glue stick, your highlighters, pencil, math notebook, and your blue resource folder. Remember, this resource folder is inside of your anchor binder, so don't take it out. Just go ahead and open it up. We are moving on from our Unit 2 on place value, addition, and subtraction, and moving into our first part of our multiplication unit. So we are going to take off the paper clip from the new Teach pages, and you are going to take off the black clip and take apart the first 2 pages. The remaining Teach pages, make sure that they're nice and neat and organized. Put the black clip back on and then tuck that back in your anchor binder, and that anchor binder needs to go in your basket to keep organized. Now we're going to go to our notebook. We're going to turn back to our last lesson from Unit 2, which we were talking about problem solving and reasoning. So we're going to turn the page, make sure that you don't skip a page, it goes directly to the next page. And we're going to be putting the pages of 40 in the top left corner and 41 in the top right corner. So remember, at any time during our video, you can pause to get yourself caught up and then push play when you're ready to continue. Now that we have our pages labeled, we're going to go ahead and go back to the table of contents. This is our new unit. So we said it's starting on page 40, and we are going to be talking today about how to multiply multiples. So we said this is our first section of multiplication directly being taught. So we're going to start with something called multiples. So today's date is 9-21-20. Now that we get back to the pages we've already numbered, you're going to put the Teach page that starts with the vocabulary up on the left side, and then the example side that has the problem 3 times 70. This goes on the right side. So use your glue stick, turn your papers over, and remember to make your frame on the outside, gluing that rectangle so it stays nice and secure, and then crisscross to turn over. We need to make sure we put this in neatly, so start at the bottom and smooth it up. If you cover up your number, remember to rewrite it. Turn this next page over, do the same thing. Crisscross through the middle, and then go ahead and smooth it up. All right, once you're done attaching those 2 Teach pages, we're going to use our highlighter and our pencil, and first we're going to write today's title on. So this is focusing on multiply, so we're going to write multiply multiples. That way we can have our title and our focus of what we're trying to learn today. When you're done, go ahead, and I'm going to highlight a box around it, because if you highlight pencil, sometimes it makes it a little bit challenging to see. So don't highlight your pencil because you're writing it, highlight the box around it. So we're still drawing our eyes to what's important, but we're not going to make it where it's too challenging to see. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to move down to the vocabulary that's going to be important. And when we talk about multiplication, we're going to be referring to several different types of properties. And properties are a set of rules or expectations of things to be followed in order to find the answer correctly. So this first one that we're going to be focusing on today is called the associative property of multiplication. So the definition for an associative property of multiplication states that factors, and remember, factors is a keyword we've been talking about in our Accoletics, so we're going to just box that. And we said factors are the numbers we multiply. So I'm going to put the number sign numbers we multiply together. So those are numbers such as 3 times 4, or 5 times 7. We multiply factors together, and it states that factors can be grouped differently. So we're going to continue on with that important statement by underlining. And the product remains the same. So when we say the product, we know that this is also an important vocabulary word that means the answer. So the answer to our multiplication problem stays the same, even though we might have grouped our factors differently. So when it says change in the grouping of the factors, changes the factors that are multiplied first. So we're going to do some practice with using the associative property. So I'm going to once again highlight the method in which we're going to be solving, so associative property of multiplication. And because we're having a problem given to us, I'm going to circle because we circle key numbers. So it's going to have the factors of 2 times 30. So when you see 2 times 30, you might right away say, oh my gracious, that's a 2-digit number I'm multiplying by, and I'm not used to multiplying by a 2-digit number. Well, we're going to talk today about a trick that you can use to help speed up the process and to ensure your understanding of a 2-digit number when it ends with a 0. So we're going to once again look at the initial problem and know that the problem is not changing, it's just the way that we do the solving. We're going to make it a little bit more manageable. So when we have the factors of 2 times 30, we're going to focus on using the associative property with that 2-digit number. So go ahead and highlight the number 30. When we see on the opposite side of the equal sign, we know that both sides of an equal sign are balanced, so they're going to equal the same number on both sides. So instead of saying 2 times 30, we're going to keep the factor of 2 the same, but the number 30 is going to be broken apart into 2 smaller factors, or a basic fact that I should have memorized. So we're going to look at the steps. So I'm going to just highlight this part to help us know that 30 was broken apart. So it says break apart the 30, which we just saw that they did. And the second step says now for us to follow to group the factors of the basic fact. Well, when we group factors together, oftentimes we say, well, this is still considered a 2-digit number, so this might still be a problem where I have a little bit of difficulty with. But if I looked at the single factor at the beginning and then the original factor of the number 2, I could consider this to be a more basic fact because they're single digits. So I could say 2 times 3 is a little bit easier for me to manage, and then that remaining factor of 10 could be used on the outside. When we then move down, we could go to the next step. But let's go ahead and do one more thing just as a reminder. So basic facts, we would still consider those to be what we have in our multiplication song. So I'm going to just remind myself that those are our songs. So when we move down, we always solve for what's inside the parentheses first. So we solve for the more basic fact. 2 times 3, I should be able to skip count by 2s to understand that that is the product of 6. The factor that I did not use yet is then brought down so I can then use it in my third step. So the third step is using this as the multiplying the factors inside the parentheses to say 6 times 10 could give me the number of 60. And this is where we're going to learn how to use this in a basic fact. So if I looked at my original number of 6 times 10, this is a trick that we'll be talking about a lot. I can look at how many zeros are in my factors. I cross them out or cancel them out, and I move it to the product right away. So whatever zeros I have that are on the outside, meaning the smallest place digits, if there's a 0 on the outside, I can immediately cross it and put it in the product. What is left is then going to be a more simple basic fact. So then I can say 6 times 1, the product of that basic fact gets placed before the 0. So if I couldn't skip count by 6s or I couldn't skip count by 10s to find out what the product of 6 times 10 is, I could use that zeros trick. Moving to the second part of our lesson, talking about multiples specifically. So multiples are what we sing in our multiplication songs. So those are the lyrics or the words that resemble the product of any given factor. So if I were to say, let's sing the 3 song, the 3 would be the original factor, but then every number that I sing in the 3 song is then considered a multiple because it's the multiplication song. So it's getting larger or growing by that predetermined value of 3. So it's a product of a given number and any whole number. So we're going to say, as an extra note, it gets bigger each time I skip count. So you might refer to this as skip counting because you're counting the multiples of the original number. So multiples means I'm getting bigger or increasing the values. So the next part says find the next three multiples. So we need to remember to look in the directions because it's going to tell us how many that they're wanting us to skip count up to. So the next three multiples in each number. So they have provided the three blanks to ensure that we do this correctly. So we're going to start with the first one. We're going to show the multiples of 10. And for this, we have our multiplication facts, our songs that we could sing. So we increase by 10. So we start at 10, 20, 30. You should know that the next one is 40. Then we increase by 50, then up to 60. Using the same idea of skip counting, this time we're going to go by 100. So we're increasing the hundreds place by increasing the digit up 1. So it's 100, 200, 300. We then continue 400, 500, 600. So we're going to continue practicing in the next section underneath the teach box, and it says to use the place value and the associative property of multiplication. And remember, associative property of multiplication means that we're going to regroup, meaning we're going to use our parentheses, move our parentheses to find the more basic fact, okay? So we're going to start at the first problem, and I'm going to lasso just to remind myself, this is going to stay the same problem even though I'm going to break it down into multiple steps. So originally our problem is 4 times 600. Well, the 600 could be renamed, and we could say, well, 600 is the same thing as 6, the digit 6 in the hundreds place. So we know that we've talked about looking back at our lesson on renaming numbers. This is why it was important for us to have an understanding of it to begin with. Now that we say 4 times 600, we can then regroup the first two numbers as what we consider our basic fact. So we're going to pull down that initial factor of 4 and the digit 6. The word form of the place value hundreds is going to be pulled down to say that this is going to represent the same information as the word. So it tells us to group the factors in a different way and find the product inside the parentheses. So our first step is to multiply inside the parentheses. So we can look back at our basic fact of 4 times 6, and we should know that that is the product of 24. So we solved in the parentheses and brought down the answer. The outside factor we have not used yet, so we bring it down to the next step to say, okay, well now this is my step I have to solve, multiplied by 100. The next step is easiest if you use your zeros trick. So we said we look for zeros on the outside of a number, we cross them out and directly move them to the product line. That's the answer line. The remaining information is now 24 times 1. 24 times 1, because we know the identity property, that means any number times itself remains the original number. So we bring down the 24, and now we just have to place the comma to show the break in the period. So we have our trick of saying 1, 2, 3, put the comma to show this number is 2,400. Moving on to the next examples, it says use the place value to find the product. So we're going to start with the original problem on the left. 6 times 50. They rewrote this for us because they're saying 6 times 5 tens, because 5 tens is really the same value of the second factor originally. So 5 tens is really 50. So we're going to say that this is still representing the original information. Then we're going to regroup it. So I'm going to just place my parentheses to give my eye a visual of what I'm going to solve for. So 6 times 5, and I'm going to show that I'm moving it down. The product of 6 times 5 is 30. The word form of the number tens, well, I could bring it down and say times 10 to say 30 times 10, and using my zeros trick, I could cross out the zeros. So there's 1 0, 2 zeros. So I put 2 zeros in my answer. The digits that are remaining are my basic fact. 3 times 1, and I place that product in front of my zeros. So 30 times 10 is equivalent to the product of 300. Moving to number 5, once again, we're going to start with our original problem of 6 times 6,000. We rewrite this as the factor that begins, and then 6 with the word form. So 6 is in the thousands place, so we're going to say this is 6 thousands. I then am going to place my parentheses just to train my eye that this is the basic fact that I solved for first. So 6 times 6, the product gets written down at the next line, so right below it is 36. The word form of the place value is then changed to my second factor. So the thousands place is 1,000. And then I can use my zeros trick to cross it out. So there's 1, 2, 3 zeros. I put those directly in the answer. What is left is 36 times 1, and we should know that anything times 1 is the original number, so 36 gets brought down. Then we just have to place the comma at the third spot, so 1, 2, 3, put your comma, your product is 36,000. On the right side, we have our pattern of how to multiply our multiples when they increase by our base 10. So we start with 3 times 70. So we use that zeros trick. So we're going to remind ourselves to say, use zeros trick. And we're going to cross out the 0, put it directly in the answer, and then we're left with the basic fact, 3 times 7. And we place that product in front of the 0 to say the answer is 210. The next one, we do the same thing, start with the zeros trick, cross out the 2 zeros, put the 2 zeros in the answer. Basic fact is still the same, so it's still 21, but now I need to put a comma to show that there's more place values. So I count over 1, 2, 3. The answer is 2,100. The last section, we have 1, 2, 3 zeros, so we place the 3 zeros in the answer. Then the basic fact is once again the same. 3 times 7 is 21, so I place the 21 in front. I need to count over 3 to place the zero or the comma between 1, 2, 3. Place your comma. The product is 21,000. Go ahead and pause your video, and I want you to try the next 2 columns. Remember to use your zeros trick. Cross out however many zeros are in the factors, place it on your answer line, and then solve for the basic fact. When you're done doing those, push play on your video. All right, go ahead and check your work. So we used our zeros trick, and then we solved with the basic fact. So the first one, 6 times 40, was equivalent to 240. 6 times 400 was 2,400. And then the last one, 6 times 4,000, was 24,000. Be very mindful of this next grouping of numbers because the basic fact is going to have a product that ends with a 0 originally. You can't be fooled by saying, oh, that 0 was already on my answer line. You have to remember you have to still add the 0 to represent the product of the basic fact. So for the first one, it says 8 times 50 is equivalent to the product of 400. Don't think of it as 40 because you forgot to add the extra 0 if you said 40. 8 times 500 is the answer of 4,000, and 8 times 5,000 is the answer of 40,000. So be mindful that if the original basic fact ends in a 0, the 0 has to be placed down even if you have zeros from your zeros trick. The last part is our practice. It says higher order thinking, so this takes a lot of problem solving strategies. It says Tina visited Funland with her mom and a friend. They bought tickets for Plan C. So I know that this is a key word, so I'm going to box it as you should as well. How much money did they save on the 2 children's tickets for Plan C instead of buying separate tickets for Plan A and Plan B? So our question we're solving for is a complex question that we're going to have to solve a couple different problems to determine. So make sure you underline the question that you're going to be answering with your solving. So our eyes have to be very mindful that they're asking us for 2 children's tickets. So when we look at the chart, we see that they're going to be organizing the information for the Funland ticket prices. So the plans are marked accordingly. There's a plan A, a plan B, and a plan C, which is the combination of both A and B. They give us adult prices and they give us children's prices. We've talked about oftentimes word problems might give us miscellaneous information. So nowhere in this word problem do we need to know adult prices. So we can even cross this out to say, I don't need to look at that. That's just too much numbers or too many numbers that I don't need. The one section we will need is the child section. So when we look, we have to determine which one's going to be the best value. So when we see plan C, we're going to say, okay, well, let's look for plan C first. If we know that plan C combines the two, but a child's ticket, which is both plan A and B together, is $40. In the word problem, it told us that we're trying to buy 2 tickets. So we're going to multiply by our factor of 2. We want to get in the habit of stacking our factors in order to line up place values. So as we continue on with our multiplication chapters and we increase the digits in the bottom factor, we are already set with our plan of attack. So for this one, we're still using our zeros trick. So I'm going to right away cross out the 0 in one of my factors, place it in the product. And remember, you only cross out a 0 if it's on the ones place or furthest to the right. So any of the ones that are in the smaller place value. We're going to then lasso the basic fact that's left to solve. So 4 times 2 gives me the product of 8. I place it right in front of the 0. And because they're talking about money, I want to make sure that I have my money symbol. Because we're in 4th grade, we need to make sure we always use the dollar sign on the left of the value. Don't use a cents sign. The next part, it asks us, did I save with plan C or if I did plan A and B separately? So we're going to record plan A and plan B. So it tells us that plan A would have spent $20 on a ticket. Plan B, we would have spent $30 on a ticket. So for buying the plans separately, we could find the combined total. So $20 plus $30, we should be able to determine that the combined total of buying them separately would be $50, which means that if I spent $50 on the 2 plans separately, but I'm still planning to buy 2 children's tickets of those plans, I need to find the actual value. So we use the zeros trick, cross out the 0, place it in our product, lasso the basic fact that's left over. 5 times 2 gives me the product of 10. We know that this is a money value, so the value is 100. Well, the question's asking us how much money did they save? So when we see how much money did they save, that means that we're going to subtract the original amount if they bought them separately compared to this plan C that was trying to show us there is a savings. So we subtract using our algorithm, starting in the ones place. 0 minus 0 stays a 0. 0 minus 8, that means there's more on the floor. Go next door, borrow 10 more, which just brings the 10 right above. 10 minus 8, more up top. No need to stop now. The difference is 2. So when we write our answer, we need to remember that we had 3 steps, but we have to label with the information needed. So our answer for this problem was they saved $20. Your last step for your notebook today is to now go back and think about what are the steps to solving a multiplication problem using your zeros trick, which is our multiples of that. Write your 3 to 5 sentences, making sure you have complete sentences with a capital, punctuation, and subject and predicate in each of those sentences. When you're done, take a picture of your completed pages. And today for your classwork, you're going to be using your Envisions workbook. That's the black and white pages in the thin workbook. You're going to be turning to page 27 and 28. At the top, it says additional practice 3-1, multiply by multiples of 10, 100, and 1,000. You are going to be working on your even numbers. So that means all the sections of problem number 2, all the sections for number 4, all the sections for number 6, and then continue circling your evens 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18 on the front. Make sure that you use your zeros trick. So we're going to write use zeros trick to help you quickly solve those problems. And on the back, which is page 28, you're going to continue solving even numbers. So number 20, 22, and then for 23, you do not have to do that, but it's always a good idea to do some practice with the assessment type of practice. When you're done, take a picture of your completed classwork and also submit that with your completed teach pages to today's lesson.